All right. Thank you, candidates. I really appreciate on behalf of CERC that you are here. And just let me talk about Coalition of Immigrant, Refugee, and Communities of Color. The Coalition of Immigrant, Refugee, and Communities of Color is an alliance of multicultural organizations and individuals with a mission to build, inform, engage equitable communities through advocacy, engagement, and education in communities of color. Our coalition includes the representative from the Eritrean Association in Greater Seattle, Ethiopian Community of Seattle, Multimedia Resource Institute, Washington African Media Association, Tigray Community Association of Seattle, Union of Tigrayan Women, North America Seattle chapter, and individuals from various communities of color. CERC values our community's lives and well-being above private, economic, and political interests. We seek to undo the institutional and internal racism and colonialism that has kept us divided and which has helped maintain the systematic oppression and marginalization of our communities for far too long. We hold dearly and value communities that are organizing themselves to also undo the social structure of dehumanization and subjugation. As such, we commit ourselves collectively to work to address the disparate impact of healthcare inequality that has been bare under the crisis and which has historically impacted our communities disproportionately. Outreach and engagement, specific outreach engagement strategy will be designed with each partner organization based on the level of education and training needed, as well as the infrastructure and community resources that partner organization has access or has the capacity and interest to develop, including survey, virtual meetings, social media outreach. Our strategy engage community members on anti-racist budget proposal and anti-racist policy agenda in King County are rooted in our past experience with working with diverse community organizations as partners and allies. Example of those strategy will be include translation, education and training, communication, and so on. So this is CERC has been doing candidates forums the last probably 12 years and continue to serve the communities for a better candidate to listen and solve the crisis that the communities of color and are facing. And I will pass it to Clarence.
Oh, well, thank you, Bearcat. Let's see, you already talked about the video and the link and all of that. Okay, all right. Just want to give Bearcat huge props. He's doing all this technical stuff behind the scenes and making this thing happen. And I appreciate him. I don't understand all of it. And I don't know how long it takes to get it done either. And so we adjusted the times a little bit, but we appreciate everybody being here today, and we'll get this information out to you so you can use it. And our different organizations will be posting it and sharing it as we get into these final days before the election. Just want to say thanks to everybody for being here. I know everybody's busy doing their last minute activities for the election, and we appreciate you giving up an hour to participate in this event. We will make sure that all of our members are informed about it and reminded about the opportunity to access this information and make an informed decision. With that, we'll go ahead and launch into the forum. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of you here, 5 out of the 8. That's pretty good. There was another 2 people that, well, there was another one that I thought would be here, maybe a third, but such is not. And somebody just called a second ago and said they can't make it a family emergency. So we're going to have good representation here. But anyway, we just want to say thank you again. Let's go ahead and begin. What are your priorities for your first 100 days in office? And I'm just going to kind of start a list. Alex, followed by Bobby, followed by Shobit, Andrew, and Alexandra. And then we'll just kind of circle around so everybody has a chance to go first. So,
Sorry to
Alex.
interrupt. Joy is here also. Joy Hollingsworth is online.
Oh, is she? I'm sorry. My screen, I don't have that thumbnail thing up there. There she is. Okay. Thank you, Andrew. That was a person.
And
that
the
said they would
questions
be
are
here.
also posted, the questions are also posted on the chat, so.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right. So opening statement prompt. What are your priorities for your first 100 days in office? Starting with Alex Cooley.
Certainly. Thank you so much for having us here. My priorities in the first 100 days of office is direct communication with everyone and every community. So an abundance of town halls weekly, having direct connections and conversations of what priorities are and preferred outcomes are of the top issues that we're facing. I'll also put forward a bill to help us combat our housing stock issue by, one, strategically increasing our zoning throughout the city, and then two, working with SDCI, Seattle Department of Construction and Inspections, to revise their code. And I believe we can actually have that piece of legislation passed within the first 100 days, that we can very quickly start significantly impacting our availability and affordability of housing. In addition to that, we'll allocate appropriate services, support, and resources to stand up Initiative 135 if already not appropriately supported. And we can do that through different measures. But really the first target in the first 100 days is connection with community and making significant impacts on our housing crisis.
Thank you. Bobby, then Shobit, then Joy, then Andrew, then Alexandra.
Okay, so good morning, everybody, or I guess we are ticked across noon hour now. Appreciate having me here, having all of us for this conversation. For me, the number one priority in terms of this race is community safety. And I think connected to that right now is the issue we're having with public drug use. And as many of you know, the city recently made the decision not to adopt state law. Some things are in motion to resolve that, and God willing, before any of us takes a seat, that's going to happen. But if not, my number one first priority is going to make sure that we do adopt some form of the state law into the code to make sure that we have the power to be enforcing the state law prohibitions on public drug use on our streets. You can't feel safe in our current condition, and we're really doing an extraordinary disservice to those that are suffering from addiction when we normalize, as we have in the present, just walking past that person passed out with a needle in their arm, or passed out next to some burnt tinfoil, and so that's my absolute number one priority. After that, I making sure that we are identifying some spots to put up some new tiny house villages. I think those are incredibly cost-effective ways to make a dent here into our homelessness issue. So I want to make sure that we're moving on that very quickly, and certainly like to also see potentially some other legislation ideas in terms of short-term rentals and figuring out how we can make sure that those aren't taking away from our housing stock, and that we're prioritizing long-term rentals and folks who are looking for housing, as opposed to corporate entities just looking to make a profit.
Okay, thank you. Shobit, then Joy, then Andrew, then Alexandra.
Sorry, I was on mute. Thank you, Clarence. So, as a PM, as a board member on my housing, my condo unit. You have to be able to juggle multiple balls, and that's where I'm excellent at. My platform has 7 different goals. That's what I'm going to focus on. The long term is working with Metro and Seattle City Light to improve the green infrastructure of the city. So the first 100 days, I'm going to reach out to them, say, what is their current plan for that, and understand where they are so we can plan for the future. The medium-term plan is about housing and homelessness and public safety, where for public safety, I'm going to reach out to members like yourself, Clarence, and other community leaders, so that we can encourage the local youth who are not going to higher education, who are not going into a sports field, to join those communities and take those jobs, because there's a lot of money that we are leaving on the table, and there's a lot of money that we are sending on public safety to a Snohomish and Pierce County that I want to go into our local communities within Seattle. So I'm going to encourage youth to join police and fire force and replace the current people. In terms of homes, fund I-135, tiny homes, etc. That may not happen in the first 100 days, but the goal will be to start the process for that. But the most important thing that can be accomplished in the first 100 days is my immediate action, which is listening to people, talking to them constantly, but streamlining the process that happens in resolving their local issues, whether it's potholes, bad pavements, graffiti, broken car windows, trash not being picked up. Sometimes people wait weeks for that. There is an app from city that people can report that on, but I want to understand, if they report on that app, how does that process work in different scenarios? Can I streamline that scenario? Do we have teams for all that work? Instead of taking weeks on end, can we resolve those issues from within 1 week or 2 at the max? That is what is going to bring the confidence of people back in the council. And that's what I hear a lot when I'm knocking doors. And I've knocked almost 3,500 plus doors personally myself, plus talk to another 1,000 people. What I hear is they don't have confidence in city council. And I want to bring that back by delivering immediate results on a day-to-day basis. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Joy, then Andrew, then Alexandra.
And just to clarify, Mr. Clarence, the question is,
What are your priorities for your first 100 days in office?
the Hallmark holiday, 100 days. Public safety. There's 3 priorities that we're pushing forward on our platform: community, public safety, number 1. Number 2 is connecting our unhoused neighbors into shelter as well. And then number 3 are workforce housing, some housing laws that we want to pass. So the first one, public safety, the first 90 days, what we tend on doing, besides going out to the communities that have been disproportionately impacted by the rise of gun violence, the disproportionately impacted communities of safety that has been happening in our community, asking them, what does safety mean to them and how we can combat that. We have some ideas, but I think it's important that we elevate the people that have been impacted the most to understand what safety means to them and how we can help facilitate some resources directly to those communities. The second piece is our unhoused neighbors into resources. We have to figure out a way in which we have immediate and emergency shelter to get people off the streets and inside to resources as quickly as possible. To stand up day centers, to tiny home villages, emergency shelter pieces, RV car lots available to folks to be able to connect to resources is going to be really, really important. And third, last piece is forming a committee of working class folks that are on the front lines. They could be first responders, teachers, an EMT, different folks that are right now are in the middle. They make just a little bit over, not to get resources, but they're getting squeezed out of the middle to understand what resources and programs that they need to alleviate specifically their housing, the housing squeeze that's going on right now. And we have a bunch of ideas that they have thrown out, but we have to form a committee that is like a rental rights committee, but they can get paid to be able to put forth some great legislation so we can ensure that we we can keep those workers living in the city, and they can now also work in this city as well. So those are going to be our three main priorities for the first 100 days.
Okay, thank you. Andrew, then Alexandra.
I think the first 100 days, we need to be realistic is it's going to be a bunch of freshmen in the state city council. So there is realistic and then there is performative responses. The most important things for the first 100 days is for me to build relationship with organizations, community-based organizations, coalitions with people, coalitions with unions, coalitions with like your organizations, to build and start understanding. So it's mostly meetings with the people that most matter. Also, the first 100 days is also ensuring that the budget that is going to be passed in 2024, we start working on it with community involvement, is to push bills that are realistic, like pushing for rent control, again, but also pushing for caps in down payments for apartments and rents, because that's something that has created lots of barriers to housing, telling people to put like 3 times the rent. It's not financially visible for a lot of people, from marginalized communities, the Black community, the migrant community. And we need to stop doing that in Seattle. Also, one of the most important things in the first 100 days is to hold town halls and forums so that people could come and tell me what they need, and build my offices, my district offices, and my visibility in the districts. Thank you.
Thank you. And Alexandra.
It's you're throwing me off a little bit here because the only person who calls me Alexandra is my grandma.
Well, I got 2 Alexes here, so
No,
I'm
I know, I
sorry.
get it. I'm just joshing with you. I'm just joshing with you. So when I was the executive director of Transportation Choices Coalition, and we onboarded new people into our organization, I had each of my staff do 50 and 50. And so the question is 100. So it's 100 and 100. You have to go out there and talk to 100 people, 100 organizations, 100 business owners, 100 residents in 100 days in order to really get a sense of like what's going on and how you can be just like absorbing like a sponge. I've already talked to, thousands of voters, and I've spent a long time working in our district. So I know a lot of folks, but I'm going to commit to that 100 and 100. A second is around housing justice. We need to make some immediate improvements to streamline the delivery of housing and reduce the cost and delay. So one thing really tangible that we can do is we can eliminate parking minimums so that the city stops forcing housing to cost more by creating parking structures that may not even be needed or that developers don't want to build. Give that choice back. I also am very committed to economic justice and consider myself to be an anti-poverty activist, which is what I've done in my career for over a decade. And I want to start a group to understand how the city can make automatic enrollment in social benefits programs so that hardworking people have to stop spending hours and hours and hours of their time to navigate complicated system to get the benefits that they're entitled to, need, and deserve. And then the thing is like, there's our priorities, and then there's the everyday work of the city that has to continue to happen. And in the first 100 days of our council term, we have to pass the Move Seattle levy, which is a 10-year commitment to transportation spending over $1 billion. So that's a have to do. Luckily, I am one of the state's leading transportation policy experts and excited about the opportunity to be investing in good maintenance and state of repair for our transportation infrastructure, as well as making transit be more reliable and useful for working class people and families like myself who don't drive, and setting us on a course to have safety, sustainability, and accessibility deeply embedded in a modern day transportation system for Seattle.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right. Let's see. One of the jobs of city council members is to get work done on behalf of their constituents. What is one issue that you want to achieve, and how would you go about getting a consensus to pass this through the city council? And we'll start with Bobby, and we'll just go through the list again. So we'll start with Bobby.
Oh, sorry, my I was tweaking with my background here and it's a little.
Okay,
Give me
no
Jason.
problem. Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay.
Did you hear the
no,
question?
no. Hey there, no, sure. So it's fine. Okay. And so you said just what's the policy that you want to accomplish and how are you going to make it happen? I mean,
Right.
like, is that our question?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to be redundant. So let me just sort of build off of a little bit this issue that we have in terms of our current addiction crisis. You know, one of the things that's obvious is that we have a desperate need for more treatment. Unfortunately, that takes a long time to develop the facilities and to train the providers in order to do that. And it's a problem with an immediate need. So one thing that I want to focus on achieving in the short term is figuring out how we can increase the availability and access of medically assisted treatment alternatives such as methadone and Suboxone, and make sure that we've done whatever possible to eliminate barriers to access, so that it's not an issue for a person to not have a driver's license, or other ID, which for a lot of folks don't have, who are living unhoused and it might be struggling. I want to live in a city where those things are at least as accessible, preferably more accessible than the fentanyl that is currently just flooding the streets. It is incredibly cost effective, frankly, these treatments, and for those struggling particularly with opioid addiction. I mean, this doesn't work, unfortunately, for methamphetamine or other substances, but for heroin and fentanyl, which are of course the two most deadly substances that we're concerned about. They're extremely effective. So yeah, we need to make sure that we're providing that to our people.
Okay, thank you. Let's see, Shobet, followed by Joy, Andrew, Alexandra, and then Alex Cooley.
So I'm going to jump off based on my previous answer for this. A lot of, when I've been talking to people, the one thing most people, and I know there are issues, homelessness, etc., passing, the new levy that is going to be on November ballot. So before we are elected, it will be over. Alex Hudson can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's supposed to be in the November ballot. So we will not be in office before it is done. So what my focus would be, making sure that the council is listening to the constituents. And the two things that I was saying, the short-term one is, how do we make sure that we increase confidence of our voters and our residents in the council, is by fixing the process, streamlining the process, so we can address their day-to-day concerns, and be showing them how the money that we have spent is being used. A lot of it is being used pretty well, but we are not communicating that to them. Even in my condo board, there is an annual audit that happens on the numbers. So we show people how that money that they have spent in their monthly HOAs is being used. And I want to convince the people and bring them along, get them on board that the city council is working for them, increase the confidence. And that is day-to-day issues resolved. And thank you.
Okay, thank you. Joy, then Andrew, then Alexandra, and Alex. Alex and Alex.
One policy that definitely want to champion is the missing middle housing piece. I currently live in the home my grandmother purchased in 1947. We turned it into a triplex back in 2001. She was able to age in place and then offer affordable housing units for our community. And the Central District, District 3 has been upzoned for a long time, but we are missing the middle housing piece. Seattle does a really good job of building really big or protecting single family zoning pieces. And ideally, what we have missed is we have passed so much policy over the last, I don't know how many years. You have policy, then you have room for interpretation of the person that's implementing that law. Then you have implementation of it, and then you have impact. What we have missed is the city workers that are interpreting what policy is being passed and how it's being implemented. And right now we miss the ball on the implementation part and the interpretation of that policy passed because we have not seen a successful impact. And so ideally what I would love to do is to go back, look at our building codes, our permitting process, and what we're missing right now is intentional programming to help people with technical assistance to convert their houses into triplexes, duplexes, and different ways for multi-purpose housing. Also like to look at a program that works in Los Angeles, where the city pays to put an ADU in your backyard where you can use it for rental to alleviate some of your housing costs, but you can also provide affordable housing as well, as long as you don't reach a certain cap on rent. And so those policies I think are going to be important as we grow as a city, because growth, we have to be comfortable with density, but it also should not mean displacement for folks. We can grow in these communities as we include them to the table. And I think that's why it's so important to have people at the table who have been in the situation before, who have done this, so we can ensure that when we're growing as a city and we're increasing density and upzoning and we can understand the people that have fallen through those gaps, because they want to grow and have density as well. And so to be the champion of the missing middle housing piece that we just passed at the state level, and now we have to implement here at the city and what that looks like.
Thank you. Andrew, then Alex Hudson, then Alex Cooley.
I think one of the things I really want to champion is I look at everything from a health perspective based on my experience and the work I do currently. And I think is the creation of harm reduction centers here in Seattle. And for me, I look at it from one, it's a place where we can control chemical use and chemical dependency and drug use, but also create a space for people to come and seek help. One thing about help is until people trust the people that are going to help them, they are scared to actually seek help. Also, it's a place where right now there's a high rise of blood-borne diseases here in King County, from HIV to hepatitis, and that's an avenue for us to be able to control and reduce HIV and hepatitis spread here in Seattle. But it's also a place where people who are going through domestic violence, sexual harassment, human trafficking, sex trafficking could go and seek help. It's been proven again and again that harm reduction centers reduce the use of it reduces the public use of chemical substances and drug use, and also reduces cases of overdose. And it's not trying to encourage people to do drugs. I tell people it's not my role to say why you're using it, but it's my role to say, I'm here to help you and give you the resources needed to get the help you need. And it's also, and on the city level, we will use those places to create branches of services. Everyone that needs services usually have to come downtown. We need to remove people from coming to one place to seek help because it creates a lot of red tapes and backlogs. And so that's how I see a harm reduction center working with health here in Seattle. And that's something I want to really bring and pass here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I want
Alex.
to lift up what Andrew and Shobit both said about saving people's lives by investing in harm reduction. But a policy that I'm really interested in seeing is, well, a lot, because there's a lot of things that need to get changed and made better in our city. But one of which is passing a municipal capital gains tax. Municipal capital gains tax is a very reasonable tax on the most ultra wealthy people in our community, people who are profiting over $250,000 from stocks and bonds. So not your retirement, not your house, but people who are making a lot of money in transactions in stocks and bonds and in Wall Street. We need to take this money and invest it in exactly those kinds of services. The oppression, the exploitation that you talked about at the beginning, the reality of the thumb of racism and classism in our society is built on a deeply unequal economy, which favors the ultra wealthy. We need to start turning around our upside down tax system and being able to get resources that we can reinvest in actual people through taking care of people through the kind of public health things that Andrew and Shobit lifted up, but also the shelter beds that we desperately need, the food assistance programs that we desperately need, and the way to alleviate the very real struggle that especially Black and brown people have had because of the deeply systemic racism built into our economy and into our government.
Great. Thank you. Alex Cooley.
Just so you know, you just call me Cooley moving forward, and Alex Hudson can be Alex for
Okay.
East. That's kind of how we ran the campaigns too. So
Okay.
I appreciate trying to juggle two Alexes. So a policy that I think is going to require a lot of consensus building that very much so impacts everyone's lives is public safety. There are still plenty of constituents who believe that public safety comes with a badge and a gun, and that's our only way to get there. And I've been having lots and lots of conversations on the doors discussing unarmed responses to develop public safety and my strategy and proposal of standing up a third leg of public safety that has direct connection, reflection, and true progress to all these things that everyone else is speaking of harm reduction, disproportional enforcement, and negative effects upon BIPOC persons. If we stand up an unarmed public safety model similar to what we've seen in Eugene or Albuquerque, I believe we will have a fundamentally safer world and a safer community that is truly reflective of our community's values. And the biggest way that we do that is by creating our own public safety academy. Similar to the police academy we had that went away in the 60s, we can stand up an institution within the city of Seattle that trains 500, 600 crisis care interventionists, mental health care providers, caseworkers, and the like, in order to truly be directly connected to community and service of community while supporting community while not hurting people's lives.
Okay, great. Thank you. And I'll do that. Cooley and Alex. Let's see. The next question, we'll start with Shobit, then Joy. It's from one of our partners, the Beacon Hill Council, and it's about environmental and health impacts. Beacon Hill, the Duwamish, Chinatown, the CID, and part of Rainier Valley are all impacted by air and noise pollution from land and aircraft that negatively impacts those communities. What are you going to do to address the inequitable health, environmental, and climate impacts on BIPOC and low-income residents? And we're starting, like I said, with Shobit, then Joy, Andrew, and then we'll circle back to the rest, Cooley and Bobby.
So I would love to do a lot. I'm very realistic, and that is one of the campaign things. I had a similar concern from a resident when I was knocking on 18th and 19th Avenue. A couple of people complained about that the airplanes come above their houses and then go down. And I actually raised it to Port of Seattle. And basically, when we met them, and they said, that is under federal governor, you have no say on that front. You can request them, but there is very little you can do about it, unfortunately. And so, yes, we will raise the concern. Same case with I-5, that's the traffic, apart from the air traffic that you hear a lot of noise. So again, I-5 becomes a federal government, so we can recommend raising walls on the other side. One side, on the southern Seattle is a hill. So like my friend has a house on southern Beacon Hill. He doesn't get a lot of noise because he's up the hill, but he's on the boundary. But on the other side of Seattle, which is near the industrial park, there is noise. We can probably recommend putting a wall, but that is again a federal question. In terms of environment, we definitely want to put in a lot more green areas around that, so it enables temperature control, provides more shades, provides more greenery, provides more oxygen locally. And that is where we can work with the local planning and say, are there defunct areas, unused industrial lots, unused areas that we can convert into parks? Great example is, New York converted in the Chelsea, they converted empty railway line into the park, which is on a lifted park. I cannot remember the name anymore. But can we do something smart like that? Converting unused buildings either into housing or into green parks with a lot of trees around it, a lot of planting. We went to the Bradner Park, and the constituents invited us, which is on the border of 2nd and 3rd, and they are doing a lot of stuff for building green building nursery, and we want to fund organizations like that, parks like that, so that people have a place to go in the shade, enjoy the oxygen, be able to be in the nature within their neighborhood to a little extent possible. So there are some things that we can only request to federal government, but there are some things that we can actively participate, and that's the environmental part of it. The air noise part of it, as I said, not under our direct control, but we can request it.
Okay, thank you.
You.
Joy, then Andrew, then Alex, then Cooley, then Bobby.
Yeah, if you live in South Park, your life, you're 7 years less. Your life expectancy is 7 years less than someone who lives north of the Ship Canal. You live in Rainier Beach, Skyway, South Seattle, your kid is probably taking an inhaler to school because they are more prone to have asthma because of the environmental impacts that we've seen in our city and the disproportionately impacted communities. We saw that with trees, right, and shade and green spaces, our parks. Those are mostly in our up north and different areas, West Seattle and Magnolia. And so one of the ways that I think we can look at, besides, we're going to hear transportation and so forth, but food accessibility. If you're in Rainier Beach, you only have one food bank to access for the entire 98118 zip code. And a lot of times we don't think about how food impacts our health and wellness, and food access points, how they can be in schools, how they can be in community centers, and when I say food bank, I'm talking about a federally funded food bank, Rainier Valley Food Bank, that's able to access federal funds, a Department of Agriculture funds, USDA, those pieces. Other people might have food access points, but they're not able to get federally funded different things like we have here in the central area and downtown. We have a lot of food banks in this area. And one of the ways in which we can figure that piece out is by localizing a lot of our food access. And in Rainier Beach, we have the Rainier Valley Urban Farms, which is a phenomenal farm, localizes our food resources. They're able to donate a lot of their food to food banks. They have culturally curated food as well. And it's important that when we think about how we're going to decrease the environmental impacts on people, that we also think about food. If you eat a hamburger, that's equivalent to 63 miles driven for that hamburger and CO2 emissions. One almond takes 1 gallon of water to grow, just one almond. And so as we can continue to localize our food resources within the city of Seattle, create more sustainability efforts, that way we can continue to decrease our environmental impact. We can also lower our carbon footprint. And we can also get communities connected to fresh vegetables and resources. During the pandemic, I was the front line on food insecurity, and we were all over in Skyway, Rainier Beach, South King County, connecting with communities to get food because of the process, and they were not able to be able to get different food access points. So I think that's one way in which the city can do a really better job, is facilitating our logistics on our food waste and connecting people to food.
Okay.
Clearance, we should be mindful of the time. When 2 minutes is, when it's up, you will hear a sound. So just, I want to be fair for everyone.
Oh, my bad. Was that over 2 minutes? My fault. I'll make sure I'm only 2 minutes.
That's fine.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Bearcat. Let's see, Andrew, then Alex, then Cooley, then Bobby.
So for me is one of the things on my platform is the Seattle Reparation Fund. It's something I want to bring to start healing from the harm. And it's not just in terms of money to the communities, also investment and infrastructure. And then let's talk about pollution air. I used to work in the aviation industry. And one thing I tell people is the city, so far the airport is not technically in Seattle, but advocating with the Seattle Port Commission and also advocating with our US Congress representatives and senators to ensure that certain flights are not being carried that frequency. A flight from Seattle to Portland, we have sometimes in a day, we have over 20 of those flights happening. We have the shuttles that go every half an hour between both cities. Should not be happening. We talk about the impact in the environment, especially again, in areas where a majority of BIPOC and Black community lives. And so the reparation fund is going to go towards working with community healthcare centers in establishing community healthcare centers free to residents in those areas. The reparation fund is also going to be used to help in terms of investing in social economic structures and infrastructures. Let's talk about some other things. During COVID, I represented the immigrant community on the Washington State's COVID DOH collaborative on how to bring about vaccines here. And it's also work I've done we brought, I think, around $300,000 to the African immigrant community who are undocumented people for COVID. So we need to ensure that we keep on bringing money to every minority communities. I really want to stress, again, Joy talked about food access, and people don't understand how bad it is for people when we talk about food access. A lot of Black people, due to gentrification, and a lot of immigrants have to go way outside Seattle to just get the groceries that they can identify with. I have to go to Renton to buy Nigerian food stuff. And so what does that mean? That means with the bad transit system, I have to use a car that damages the climate. So we need to provide financial subsidies for small businesses to thrive, again, through reparation funds. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Alex. Then Cooley, then Bobby.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a really important question. I've been working at the intersection of environmental justice and economic justice for a very long time. And it's clear and obvious that environmental racism and racial racism are the same issue. So there's a couple of things that we know are proven solutions. So one, the more walkable the community is, the less likely there is to be this disproportionate effect of air pollution and greenhouse gas emissions. So dense walkable communities that have everything that you need within walking distance are an important climate solution, as well as have the co-benefit of helping to address our housing affordability crisis that we already talked about. Transportation is the single largest emitter of greenhouse gas emissions and human harm causing air pollutants in our city and in our state. And so the science is very clear on this. We need to reduce the amount of miles that people travel by 50% and then electrify the remaining 97% of trips if we're going to meet our own adopted climate goals and create healthy air that doesn't lead to things like, as you mentioned, infant mortality. And so I say that you shouldn't have to have a gallon of gas in order to get a gallon of milk. And so we need better public transit and denser walkable communities. We also need to acknowledge that climate change is already here, and we need to be investing in heat and smoke, heat cooling centers and smoke facilities like our community centers, like our libraries, like our senior centers, and upgrading also people on fixed income and low income people's heat pumps and providing air purifiers. I too live underneath the flight path, and it's just ridiculous how much we're allowing for these harmful pollutants to just spray down on our city like every 3 minutes. So I have kind of an interesting proposal, which is to figure out if it would be possible for the city to levy basically a toll on the use of our own airspace for a very small amount of money. Given the hundreds of planes that fly over our city, we could take all of that money and invest it in environmental justice, and specifically invest it in a tree fund so that we can do this hugely beneficial program, which is to meet our tree canopy goals, starting in the most underserved and oppressed communities like South Park, like Georgetown, like Rainier Beach, like the Central District, and plant those thousands of trees using money from the very people who are polluting our sky.
Great, thank you. Let's see, Mr. Cooley, then Bobby.
So a lot of really great things said here, and all are solutions that we need to implement in order to make substantive impact upon this. We're all impacted by the climate effects. We're all impacted by the planes that are flying over me right now. Some things that haven't been mentioned is working directly with the Port of Seattle, particularly in their aviation fuel and sustainable aviation fuel program, SAF program, which they are leading on globally, as well as working with them on noise pollution components associated to it. In addition to it, in climate in general, we need to be throwing everything we can at this problem. In addition to what has been mentioned, making transit free is a major component of how we reduce our environmental impact. Alex spoke to how many cars we need to get off the road because cars are our #1 polluter in the city. Best way to do that is make transit free to everyone. In addition, we have to look at how we manage our solid waste program. So our garbage, there are much more environmentally responsible ways to dealing with our garbage recycling and compost, and we can implement those in the city relatively effectively and cost efficiently. And trees. Can't say it enough.
Okay, and Bobby. Oh, we don't hear you yet. We don't hear you. There you go. Nope.
How about now?
There you go. Thank you.
Okay.
Yep,
great.
we're good.
Sorry, folks. Yeah, so many great ideas. I won't take too much more time. I agree with many of other candidates here. I like Alex, would love to see us finding ways that we can creatively tax some of these entities. We have, King County International Airport, otherwise known as Boeing Field, is here within the city. So much of that traffic there is really just private craft. And you have these private jets that are so disproportionately contributing in terms of greenhouse emissions. Love to find a way that we can be levying some kinds of taxes, if that maybe ends up having to be something that's being done through partners on the county council. We have to be creative about finding ways to utilize the power of the government and taxation to try and encourage better behavior in terms of climate consciousness, and then utilize also some of that capital for projects like we've heard described thus far. Our need to ensure that we're building up the tree canopy in those communities, ensure that we're providing access to air filtration systems. I mean, that's something that is increasingly an issue for all of us in the city, and will continue to be worse and worse, unfortunately, with longer fire seasons. And so making sure that, all of our schools, are, well equipped with systems that are, cleaning and purifying the air for the young, when, of course, you're most vulnerable to this sort of fallout. All of that critically important stuff. Thanks.
Thank you. All right. The next question, we'll start with Joy. Public safety, and we kind of hit on some of these, so we can maybe, move a little quicker with the responses since you've covered some of them. But anyway, the next question is public safety is a major concern in the city. What plans do you have to improve public safety and policing, especially in all communities of color, as it impacts all communities of color? And it's Joy, Andrew, Alex, the same cycle.
Yeah, public safety is one of the major concerns in our city. Our city has a responsibility to keep its number one responsibility is to keep us safe, right? We keep our community safe with ourselves, but also the government plays a role in that. And for me, it's the right response to the right situation. And we have our first responders, mental health workers, social workers, an EMT, fire, police. We want quicker response times, right? Priority 1 call, 7 minutes. Priority 2 should take about 20 minutes. Priority 3 should take way less, under an hour. Right now it's at 2 hours. So when you are in need, when something happens, we should have a response. Right now, what's happening is our response times are higher. We're not getting people connected to resources. And one program that we talked about, besides us, having a police, fire, and EMT being able to respond to stuff, is our Health One department. Our Health One only has two vehicles. It was a program they set up back in 2019. It is a phenomenal program that needs a ton more funding to be able to connect. And their number one outreach that they connect with folks to is people experiencing homelessness into shelter and resources. So we have to fund our Health One. We have to have quicker response times. And I also want us to continue to fund and lower the gun violence going on in our community. Central District, we're hearing, unfortunately, we hear a lot of gunshots. And I know in the South End, a lot of people have been impacted by gun violence. And so if we can be able to, this holistic approach into safety and having the right response to the right situation, and knowing that those people are responding with care, they're trained and they have the resources, I think that's going to create a safety. But people want to know when they call 911, they're going to get a response to whatever situation that they're going through.
Okay, thank you. Andrew, then Alex.
The first one I think we should focus is gun violence. It's a problem especially in the Black community in South Seattle, our youths, and then there's also the gun violence between African immigrants also. So I think we need to create programs for youth specific, working with organizations like FAST to ensure that we combat youth violence and teach our youths other methods of conflict resolution. In terms of the police right now, they handle things that should not be. So we need to diversify the police in terms of parking and law enforcement, parking, traffic law enforcement should not be under the police. It should be a standalone. Investment money in Health One. We need to create accountability and transparency, especially with the police contract coming up. We need to also, invest in simple safety things like more street lights, especially in schools, in hospitals, in the parks. We also need to create a community. We have the Office of Police Accountability. We need more civilians involved to create more transparency and again, accountability into investigating the cops. I really think when we talk about public safety, I've spoken about harm reduction centers. They are a way to bring about public safety. And most especially when we talk about public safety is we need to ensure that our recruiting process for the police is intentionalized from a focus of racial equity and social justice. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Alex, then Cooley, then Bobby.
Yeah, this is the most important issue. It's the government's most important responsibility is to make sure that we're all safe. As it relates to like when you need help or you see somebody who needs help and you need someone to call, there's a couple of things we need to do there that are very clear, very obvious, and people have been asking for several years and the government has not made real. So some of those are about alternatives. So if you call into 911 and the issue is that you see somebody who needs a wellness check or is experiencing homelessness or drug addiction, that you can call and that a homeless service provider or a drug addiction specialist is going to show up. We also need co-responders. I hear from EMTs and others that they show up to these situations, they don't always feel safe. So they want a police officer to come with them. And if we can alleviate those anywhere from like 15 to 40% of calls that come into 911 that are really about social services or behavioral health, we can allow our police to be responding to issues around crime. Obviously, we need to have a reformed police force. This is very obvious. And we can only look to the most recent example of the keeping of a tombstone inside of the East Precinct of a young man who, Mr. Butts, who was killed by the police, as a deeply horrific and shameful example of the need for police reform in our city. We also need violence prevention. That's community violence interrupters and prevention services. We need overdose recovery centers and safe consumption sites so people can be connected to the services that they need in order to stay alive and have a chance at a better tomorrow. And I also want to lift up that safety is an all of government solution, that every single one of our city departments should be thinking about how to make our lives safer and better. And that means things like that we have good sidewalks and bike lanes so that people are safe when they're moving around their neighborhoods, that we have well-lit streetlights so when you're out having an evening walk after dinner, that you can see where you're going, and that we've supported and invested our small business community so that they can stay open later and contribute to vitality in our neighborhood. But we all deserve to feel safe. I'm the mom of a 14-year-old and we ride public transit everywhere we need to go. So this issue is as deeply important to me as it is to anyone. And there are very clear and obvious solutions that we just really need to see be implemented.
Great, thank you. Cooley, then Bobby. There he is.
Sorry, I'm on the move now. I had this allotted till 12:45, so I apologize. I feel like I've answered this question a lot already in standing up a third leg to public safety, having our own public safety academy, having safety solutions rooted in communities because they're developed by community. In addition to that, prevention of gun violence and other violent crimes. A very large component of doing that is making sure that we do not have people publicly using drugs on our streets and engaging in an illicit marketplace for substances. So it's already been spoken to of harm reduction centers. I think that's a very important component of making our streets safer and creating safe consumption sites. In respect to gun violence prevention, we have to invest in upstream solutions. Very similar to what I've done at 23rd and Jackson, working with We Deliver Care and community passageways and space activation, utilizing support from the mayor's office to King County Councilmember Gurmai's office. We have to give young people opportunity. We have to give them purpose. And that is where it must begin. And things in addition to that, doing a free gun lockbox giveaway that we did a few months back. Small little things like that are going to be major contributors to gun violence prevention, because there is not one fell swoop of how we prevent gun violence. It is a myriad of solutions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Bobby, then Shobit.
Yeah, so I do not support open use sites, and harm reduction, it sounds fantastic, right? When we say that, but unfortunately, I think that there's some real questions about the data on whether or not that in fact serves communities. In terms of public safety, we need to try and bridge the trust gap between SPD and the community. SPD has made that tough. We had some unfortunate revelations that came out just recently about some stuff going on in terms of the internal culture, and there's clearly some need for some genuine reflection and some more answers as to that. But I want to see community. I want to see SPD engage in more community-centric policing. I want to see more foot and bicycle patrols. I want to see SPD again just engaging on a face-to-face level with humans, not just racing around in their cars and descending upon crime scenes with 5, 6, 7 officers. These things are achievable. Something they've done in Chicago that I'd like to see happen here is they utilize some housing incentives as opposed to just providing cash bonuses, which you've done here in the city, to ensure that officers there were in fact living in the communities that they were patrolling. And I think that's a really important goal, and I would like to see us making that happen here. I think that goes a long ways towards ensuring also that the officers are more invested in their neighborhood and the outcome of the work they do, and that they better understand the individuals that they're serving. Thanks.
Thank you. Shobit.
Thank you, Clarence. There have been a lot of good ideas, apart from Bobby Goodwin. Everybody else is pretty much aligned on that. And I've talked about safety, public safety earlier. We have to build people's cars. It is a critical issue. I've heard both sides of it from different people while talking to people, knocking doors. The key is I want the police and the fire people and all the public safety people, nurses, doctor, EMT, coming from Seattle residents. We have 750,000 people living in Snohomish County and Pierce County to be our cops and fire people. I don't understand. If we were to encourage our local youth to join and take over those jobs, they create jobs, get some.
There is a bad connection.
Yeah. Shobit. Reconnect. Hello? Okay. All right.
We'll go then.
We'll have to move on. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're down to the last question, and then we'll do closing statements. Barakat, the housing question, and we'll start that with Andrew, followed by Alex, and then we'll cycle through.
Sorry, I lost the connection earlier. Can I finish my
Yeah.
thought?
Okay. Yeah. 15 seconds.
So basically, I'm in connection with most of the people. The key is I want the personnel coming from Seattle because that brings the jobs in Seattle, it keeps the money in Seattle, and people know their friends and neighbors, and it'll be a different attitude. It won't have the attitude of what just was reported. And my basic goal is bringing everything in-house, and then secondly, creating community peace officers who take a lot of work out of this, a lot of non-violent stuff out of the plate of the police officers. But I want community to be involved in massively.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next question, Barakat.
Thank you. I know the question was answered in a different way, but we'll focus since it's so important to our communities of color. This is about the issue of housing. What programs or a plan do you advocate for reducing the loss of minority home ownership, especially on homes owned by the original families and or their descendants in historically Black communities in Seattle. This is about gentrification remains a threat to our diversity that we value so much. So because of real estate value, many communities of color, especially in Capitol Hill and Rainier area, are evacuating. They cannot afford to live on their own houses because of, taxes. What kind of measure do you take to restore the values that we as satellites underline in our diversity?
Okay, we'll start with Andrew, then Alex, then Cooley, then Bobby, and then Shobit, and then Joy. Okay.
I think one of the most important thing is, as a city council, is to advocate, and it means advocating in Olympia to ensure that property tax for especially the elderly and elderly Black and Black community members and immigrants are really reduced. A lot of those communities are on fixed income from Social Security or retirement or disability check. Then another thing is a legislation banning predatory actions by financial companies. When someone dies, some of these companies send very threatening or misinformed letters to the next of kin, telling them that they have to sell the house, and a lot of people fall victims to this tactics. We need to ban those predatory methods. One thing that has been said earlier on, and I think Joy brought it up, is the city, the ability to upzone houses quicker, so less red tapes, but also, again, it goes back to reparation funds, using the reparation funds to give back to these homeowners to be able to extend or expand their housing to ensure that they can create housing for the next generation, creating multi-generational housing units. But it's also important that we also bring about a right to return for people that have already been impacted. So a right to return means that when new housing is built in that community, in that environment, the Black American African people, the immigrants that were displaced, have the first dibs to return to those units. And also that we need to ensure that when we talk about social housing, we go beyond just 2 bedrooms. We need more than 2 bedrooms. We need 3 bedrooms. We need housing that that can accommodate multi-generational units, multi-generational family units, because it's something that is highly overlooked. But a lot of minority communities are multi-generational in terms of housing and living together. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Alex, then Cooley, then Bobby.
Yeah, housing is one of the most important issues. I've been working around housing for a very long time. I'm on the board of an affordable housing provider and developer, and help to bring millions of dollars into housing. It is critically important, though, that we recognize that a lot of what the city does right now is about rental. And that is great, and that is good, and that's fine. But the pathway to the middle class and to build intergenerational wealth in this country, in this economy, is through homeownership. So we need to be protecting the Black and brown families who own homes in our city right now through public policy, as opposed to harming them through gentrification and displacement like we have now. So the Black Home Ownership Initiative that Housing Development Consortium is running in Olympia is a critical first start. We need to be having community priority and right to return, like at the Liberty Bank project at 23rd and Union. The city needs to be investing using our Jumpstart dollars in things like the Equitable Development Initiative in order to be retaining community centers. We need to invest in repair funds so that folks can have access to funds that help them help their houses when they have kind of major unexpected. And I already lifted up an extremely important, which is the fact that there are many people, elders who are on fixed incomes, who are eligible for property tax deferral programs right now, but the gap between who's eligible and who's enrolled is really high. And that's because the barriers are really high and the information is really low. It's the government's responsibility to automatically enroll people in the programs like property tax deferral and repair and all of these things so that folks can stay where they are. I also want to just like lift up initiative I-135, which is social housing, which is a way that we can make fundamental restructures into creating like long-term housing stability outside of the commodification of housing, which is the way that we do it now.
Okay, great. Thank you. Cooley, then Bobby, Shobit, then Joy.
Lots of really great programs mentioned that I'm just going to echo. You know, we have to make sure that people are not being pushed out of their home by unburdened taxes or predatory purchase strategies. It's massively significant for the CD that's gone from 36% BIPOC to now 11%. I can't tell you how many people I've explained on their front doorstep the tax deferral program. So Alex is 100% spot on that there has to be an auto enrollment associated to it. There also has to be requirements for developers for all these anti-displacement and inclusionary practices of how we develop, because we are going to be developing more in the city. So we have to do it very strategically, that it is appropriate and incredibly important. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Bobby? There he is.
Am I on here? Did it?
Yep, you're good.
Saying the Cooley for council. Like I just pinned him. Okay. Yeah, you know, and likewise, I don't want to be too redundant here, especially mindful past our time. But I agree with both of our Alexes here. Although we have these great programs in the city, it doesn't really matter if folks don't know about them. And so we need to continue to make those investments to make sure that you know, for individuals who've owned homes and now just seen these property taxes that have increased, you know, so dramatically over the last, you know, 30 years aren't getting priced out. So make sure we continue to make those investments, make sure that we continue to support the community preferencing, which is something that the city also just kind of recently enacted, something that again really took shape and had a lot of a significant role in the development up at 23rd and Union, and with Jackson Heights. And so and for me, I'm try to stay really mindful of the fact that obviously I represent, frankly, a gentrifying force. Came here to go to law school and acquired this townhouse that I'm still been in now 16 years later here in the Central District. And I'm mindful of that fact that I need to be sure that that I'm doing a lot of listening in this space as well. And to the folks who've been around, to the folks, individuals of color who are having these impacts and experiencing them and hearing from them as to what they think is going to be most helpful, as opposed to just proscriptively telling them.
Okay, thank you. Shobit and Joy.
Thank you, Clarence. I'm not going to go on video since my connection is weak right now. There have been a lot of good ideas said. A lot of them are on the defensive side, where we are trying to keep what people have, make sure that they own it. I like the right to first refusal if they are replacing their building with something else, that they have, say, an option of choosing one or more of the apartment or condos. The key is looking for the future, and we have been discussing the current problems, but not what the 20, 30, 40 years down the line looks like. My biggest platform is green infrastructure, which is investment in both public transit as well as Seattle City Lights. So as we deliver the president and the governor's goal of electrifying everything, especially vehicles, We can build the next set of technology massively in Seattle, which means the next voluminous growth of industry in Seattle. Unfortunately, the minority community missed a lot of benefit of that growth in the past 20 years from internet. And I want to make sure that that industry doesn't lose out on the next 20, 30, 40 years of growth, which means investment in education, make sure we are bringing them along, making sure that we are supporting innovation in the minority communities so that their kids and grandkids can actually become part of the wealth creation, and then they can share it so that they have an equal, if not better footing than the other people in Seattle or the migrants who are coming from other states or other areas in Washington state or outside of the country. Because that is going to be reality. Next 20, 30, 40 years, I see a massive, massive growth of industry. And I want that we are supporting the people of color to actively participate and benefit from that growth. I also want to use organizations like community engagement. They are having an event tomorrow where they have a $27 million fund, and they're trying to see how they can use it. And a couple of my recommendations to them were, can we have a co-op for African community so that there is food access to all people around? And then same case, can we build buildings owned and resided by for the people of color so they can stay in houses in Central District and South Seattle.
All right, thank you. All right, Ms. Joy, last person on this question. Then we'll go to the closing statements.
Yeah, this is near and dear to my heart. Two ways in which wealth has been acquired in this country has been land grab and has been exploitation of labor. And so in the Central District, and I want to correct a stat, I think I heard 36%. It was actually 90% at one time. The Central District was Black. Now we're under 10%. The average net worth of a Black family in the city of Seattle is $25,000. Half of Black families in the city of Seattle have 0% net worth. The average net income for a family of 4 in the city of Seattle has been $48,000 household income the last 10 years. That is a housing generational wealth issue. And so most families, Black families, created their wealth through housing, through passing that down from their grandparents and legacy to their kids and their children. And there was a study that just came out from King County, and it was published in the Seattle Times, that because of redlining and the racist practices of redlining, Black families are owed $34 billion. That harm was caused by redlining and not being able. I live on the most northern side in which the color of my skin could purchase a home, which is on Madison. Could not buy any more farther than Madison that we saw in the city of Seattle because of redlining. And so when we're thinking about home ownership and how we create this generational wealth and economic mobility for Black families, which is key. Number one, it's home ownership. There's a program with HomeSite, and it's called High Neighbor. It's named after our first Black council member, Sam Smith, where they give down payment assistance up to a certain amount. I would like to see that increased. I would like also for us to look at the community reinvestment funds that we fought so hard for at the state legislature through cannabis tax dollars. We're taxed the highest at 37%, that are going back into the community. It's ran through Department of Equity and Department of Commerce to create this reinvestment fund into DIA, disproportionately impacted neighborhoods, to be able to restore the war on drugs and the harm that was done to communities. And one of those is through housing purchase ability. We also have to keep people in their homes. Every day, I can to tell you, I get, when my grandmother was alive, we would get offers all the time. People, predatory lending, sending you things in the mail, cash offer, cash offer, cash offer all the time. We have to figure out a better job into which we can keep people in their homes so they can age in place as they want to pass those down. That's through, relief tax credits. That's through, rental, different assistance. And I see that my time is up. I could go on and on about that, but thank you. I'm going to respect that time marker. Thank you.
It's a passionate issue for a majority of the folks on the screen. So We appreciate everybody's input and enthusiasm. Thanks everybody for being here tonight or today and participating in this. Closing statements. 1 minute. I'm timing it. I'm turning the alarm on. It's going to rain. Why you? Why now? Why will you make a difference? Okay, we're going to start with Alex and then just go through the list. Alex, then Cooley, then Bobby, and so on. Okay, why you? Why now?
Thank you so much for this opportunity. I am an everyday person trying to make a healthy future in the city of Seattle for myself, for my community, and for my kid. I have a lot of experience working on mobility, environmental, and housing justice for over a decade. I have helped to build actual units of housing, site homeless shelters, make transit free for every young person. And I believe very deeply in a just and fair economy where there's shared access to prosperity. These things are possible with a ferociously progressive understanding of the deep inequities and systems of oppression that are built into our government, into our economy. I am ready from day one. We're going to have a brand new city council with the vast majority of people being there for less than 4 years. And I am ready from day one to start fighting on behalf of everyday working class people in our society. And I am grateful for the opportunity.
Okay, all right, perfect timing. Thank you. All right, next is Mr. Cooley, followed by Bobby, then Shobit, Joy, and Andrew. All right, set my alarm again. Let's go.
So why me? Why now? I think our city and city council specifically is very much so in need of a very upbeat generalist. We do not need specialists right now. We need a council member who is capable of stepping forward and dealing with an abundance of policy. And that's what I've done. You know, I've been an advocate, I've been an activist, I've been a business owner, I'm a father, I'm a husband, I'm a substitute teacher. Hell, I'm even a licensed general contractor right now. I've written more laws than any other person who is proposing to be the next council member. So I know how to actually draft policy, implement policy, pass policy, and actually follow through with regulation and continued engagement of community. I think how I'm running my campaign is a direct reflection of my values, having knocked over 10,000 doors personally and funding my entire campaign through the Democracy Voucher Program, receiving over $90,000 of Democracy Voucher contributions that I have collected face to face with people.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Cooley. About to say Alex again. Anyway, Bobby, then Shobit, then Joy, then Andrew.
Yes, to ask ourselves right now, what are the most pressing issues facing the city? I would suggest that it's public safety, homelessness, and our drug epidemic. And I'm the only person that's running that spent over a decade dealing with these issues. As a public defender, the homelessness issue has been a fundamental one that I've been grappling with as I've struggled to assist my clients working through those challenges. Similarly with substance abuse. And when we talk about public safety, having a good understanding of the operation of the legal system, of the criminal justice system, that can really, there's no substitute for experience. And in this case, I believe it is in fact that experience that has me best prepared to try and work to effectively bridge the gap, the trust gap between SPD and the community, and to really, again, hope to clean up these streets and bring a safer community for us all. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Let's see, Shobit, then Joy, then Andrew.
Hi, Shobit Agarwal, District 3. My experience working as a senior program manager at Microsoft, as well as as a treasurer on my condo board, has taught me that I have to listen to everybody. I have to work with others to reach a compromise solution. And then the money is always finite, so you have to use it effectively and efficiently. And that's what I'm going to bring to the Seattle Council. Plus, I'm the only one who has a long-term vision goal of where I want to look the city look like in 20, 30 years. My green infrastructure plan, both Metro Transit as well as Seattle City Light, will enable an expansion of a huge industry in Seattle, bringing prosperity and equitability to Seattleites. And that's what I want. And then I want to address housing, which will solve homelessness. And then I want to listen to the constituents and make sure we resolve all their local problems as fast as we can and bring trust in the government. And yes, I am also running only on the voucher program. That's what I've been relying on. And my campaign is very limited. It's very, very efficient. Thank you.
All right, thank you, sir. All right, then we got Joy and then Andrew.
I'm a third generation Seattleite that has seen how public policy over 39 years have impacted people in those communities that has specifically fallen through those gaps. We are running our campaign on focusing on the fundamentals of our city government and being a conduit from our community to the 45 different city departments to over the 15,000 different city employees that are within our city, because that is very hard to navigate. Someone who works and knows how to work on a team, you need 5 votes to be on council. Someone knows how to work on a team. Someone knows how to get to yes. Someone who knows how to work and be a team player and work connection with a mayor's office and want to push forward really good policy, because you have to know people to put forth good policy to have a lasting impact. We're running on public safety, connecting unhoused neighbors into small business, and I would be honored to earn people's vote and their support. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Andrew, the final word.
I think we all have issues that are dear to our hearts. And for me is, I have walked the talk I'm talking. I have done a lot of work ensuring that immigrants' voices are uplifted in the civic community here in Seattle, in King County, in Washington. I've even done lobbying all the way in US and Washington, DC. Housing is big because I know the impact, because I have been impacted by housing. I have been impacted by injustice, the racism, the police brutality. And we need someone that is ready to stand up and not perform in terms of talking. We need someone to do the work. We need someone that is also going to feel the pinch if they fail in city council. But most especially, we need someone that is able to bring all communities. I say the minority majority, please vote for me.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, one and all. I appreciate everybody being here tonight, or this afternoon, excuse me. It was very informative, heard a lot of really great ideas and information. There are a lot of questions we didn't get to. You didn't get to explain all of your answers completely, but this is just the beginning. There'll be another round of candidate forums in October for whoever the 2 finalists are that head into the general election. So, kind of keep your eyes and ears open for that. Barrett will do the closing, and in addition to the closing, he'll also explain, about the video and when it'll be available and how and whatnot, so that we can make sure we get the word out, because we will be, working with our partner organizations to make sure they A, get it out, and B, get out the vote. So thank you one and all for being here today, and I'll turn it over to my partner and let him close it out. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much for valuable time that you have spent with us. And the conversation was very candid and very explicit in terms of for the need of the some of the social problems that we are facing in our communities. I think such a healthy debate will enhance our participation in our democracy, and that's all about. So thank you so much, and I wish you good luck for your candidacy. And at the end, today's interview will be accessed live if you subscribe to my Facebook for now. But at the end, we'll edit it and we'll send it to you, or put it on our website at Circa. This is what I have to say for now. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of the day. We have a
All
good
right.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good
you.
day. Good luck. Bye-bye.